In the hour before dawn, the rainforest still holds its breath. Mist clings low to the canopy, filtering what little moonlight remains into silvery vapor. Beneath the broad crowns of caber and kapok trees, the air is heavy, motionless, as if the forest itself is listening. Then, without warning, the silence fractures. A single note swells from the canopy's depths, not a roar, not a growl, but something more elemental, a deep, resonant tremor that rolls through the forest like thunder drawn from lungs. The call grows, layering upon itself until the sound becomes physical, pressing against the chest and skin of everything that hears it. Leaves shiver. Birds lift from their roosts in alarm. Far down the valley, another voice answers. The jungle is awake. The source of that sound is no giant predator, but a creature of modest frame, a howler monkey, Alouatta seniculus, weighing little more than 7 kilograms. Yet in terms of acoustic power per body mass, few mammals on Earth rival it. The secret lies not in strength, but in anatomy. A ballooned hyoid bone housed in the throat, a resonating chamber of bone and cartilage that transforms exhaled air into a broadcast capable of traveling 3 to 5 kilometers through dense forest. In acoustic terms, it's a megaphone sculpted by evolution. The low frequencies, some under 500 hertz, bypass leaves and branches that scatter higher pitches, allowing the call to ripple through the canopy like a subsonic tide. What begins as a breath inside one primate's chest becomes a field-wide announcement of ownership, territory, and unity. But there's a deeper question beneath the noise. The forest is not empty space. It's an intricate three-dimensional maze of trunks, leaves, vines, and humidity gradients. Every surface reflects, absorbs, or refracts sound differently. To communicate effectively here is to understand, or instinctively adapt to, how sound behaves in a living labyrinth. The howler's roar, therefore, is more than just a threat display or social beacon. It is a sculpted signal tuned to a specific environment. The deep rumble doesn't just carry, it fills. When several males call from distant trees, the echoes overlap and inflate, merging into an acoustic mirage that suggests an army where only a handful exist. In aerial recordings, this illusion is startling. Across kilometers of tangled canopy, a single troop's chorus expands outward like the concentric rings from a dropped stone, bouncing between ridgelines, caught and bent by valleys. In denser forest, the sound lingers, trapped by layers of foliage that act as acoustic walls. After rain, when the leaves are wet and the air denser, those same calls change character, lower, smoother, traveling further still. It's as if the forest itself conspires with the monkeys, amplifying their message. Rain, rather than muting life, becomes an acoustic bridge between fragmented islands of trees. On sound maps, the difference is measurable. In dry air, the reach may fade under 2 kilometers. After rain, it can stretch past 4. Evolution, in this case, has sculpted a throat to work not just with lungs but with weather. To the howlers, territory is not a static space on a map. It's an acoustic territory, defined by what can be heard. Their boundaries are not drawn by scent or sight, but by the horizon of their voices. When rival troops approach, the conflict often never becomes physical. The exchange of roars, long echoing volleys of claim and response, serves as a negotiation. Whoever sustains the illusion of greater strength, of more males, of deeper resonance, often wins without contact. The result is a remarkable form of resource conservation. Energy that might have gone into violent clashes is instead spent in sound. The forest becomes a court of echoes, where bluff and presence merge into a single evolutionary advantage. Scientists studying these calls use directional microphones and acoustic sensors placed across ridges to map the spread and shape of each vocalization. What they find reveals how intimately the monkey's behavior mirrors the terrain. In valleys, calls curve upward, gaining reach through natural amphitheaters of stone and canopy. On flat plateaus, sound diffuses quickly, forcing more frequent exchanges. In patchy or deforested areas, the illusion of troop size collapses. Sound loses the walls it needs to bounce from. The forest's architecture, in other words, is part of the monkey's voice. Deforestation doesn't just remove trees, it silences strategies that have evolved for millennia. Within a troop, the structure of sound communication is just as intricate. A dominant male begins the dawn chorus, throat expanded, body braced on the branch's flexing edge. Others join, females, subadult males, creating a layered resonance that carries emotional texture as much as raw power. Listeners can distinguish a troop's density, hierarchy, and even stress level from tonal differences. When food is scarce or when predators linger nearby, jaguars on the ground, harpy eagles overhead, the calls sharpen, their intervals irregular. Communication doubles as warning. A sudden, synchronized silence that follows a distant rustle means something has entered their perimeter. Sound in the canopy is also shaped by the unseen, temperature, wind, and time of day. In early morning, before the rising thermals begin to stir the air, sound travels furthest. That's why the dawn chorus is no coincidence. It's physics at work. As sunlight warms the canopy, the air stratifies, scattering and bending low frequencies upward. By midday, a howler's roar barely crosses a kilometer. Nature has built in a curfew for their dominance displays. At night, when the forest cools again, they rest. The balance between biology and physics is precise, almost mathematical, an evolutionary partnership between lungs and atmosphere. Yet for all its power, the howler's voice is not simply noise. Each call carries identity. Troop members recognize individuals by the subtle inflections in their tone, like auditory fingerprints. Infants, still developing their resonant chambers, produce squeaky pre-roars, practice notes that strengthen the hyoid over months. When mature, that bone can act like a tuned drum, amplifying low tones without the need for enormous lungs. This adaptation likely evolved in parallel with the fragmentation of forests during ancient climate shifts. As canopy gaps widened and populations scattered, louder communication became survival itself, the ability to find mates, maintain group cohesion, and signal threats across greater distances. In this way, the howler monkey is both musician and messenger of the forest. Its voice ties fragmented ecosystems together, bridging what human deforestation has divided. Where roads cut through canopy corridors, sometimes only sound can pass freely, and in that passing, it sustains connection. The rainforest, though broken into patches, still pulses as a single organism through these calls. Every dawn when that rolling chorus rises, it is the forest reasserting its continuity, not through sight or scent, but through sound waves rippling over kilometers of green. As the sun lifts higher and the calls fade, the forest settles into its daytime rhythm. Cicadas take over the airwaves, birds resume their territorial songs, and the illusion dissolves back into the hum of life. Yet the traces remain, invisible vibrations in the air, subtle memories etched into the canopy's acoustics. The question lingers, can a voice truly be bigger than a body? In the howler's case, The answer is yes. Its roar is the sound of small biology amplified by grand physics, proof that in nature, scale is not measured in muscle, but in mastery of the medium. The camera drifts upward through the rising mist, capturing the last distant echoes rolling across the emerald sea of leaves. Somewhere beyond sight, another troop answers, their notes interlocking in a slow, deliberate exchange. Between them stretches not silence, but connection, an invisible bridge of air and resonance. The forest listens, and through that listening remains whole. Rain begins to fall over the Blackwater floodplain, a soft percussion that shifts the very physics of the river. Droplets ripple across the still surface, carrying the scent of new minerals, faint tannins and distant rot. Beneath, the water is tea-dark, steeped in leaves and humic acid, where light cannot reach more than a meter before dissolving into shade. In this murk, eyes are useless and motion is betrayed by every wave. Yet somewhere below, a shadow slides forward with absolute certainty, not seeing but feeling the world as pulses of invisible force. The electric eel moves through the dark like an instrument, each muscle fiber tuned to broadcast and receive. What for us would be blindness, for it is pure clarity. The Electrophorus electricus is both hunter and transmitter, a living node in the wet circuitry of the Amazon basin. Its body, long and supple as a ribbon of mercury, conceals 3 electric organs that run nearly the length of its frame. 2 of these, the sacs and hunter's organs, hum at low voltage, producing hundreds of faint pulses per second, each no stronger than the flicker of a watch battery. The third, the main organ, can unleash high-voltage discharges reaching up to 600 volts. But to understand this creature, voltage alone isn't the story. Electricity for the eel is not merely a weapon, it is a way of seeing. In the flood season, when the forest becomes a drowned world of trunks and vines, the eel's low-voltage fields expand into the surrounding water like the bloom of a ghostly aura. Every submerged branch, every swimming fish, every grain of suspended sediment disturbs that field, bending its symmetry, changing its phase. To the eel's specialized electroreceptors, these distortions are as readable as light and shadow. A school of tetras ahead might appear as a cluster of electric silhouettes. A single catfish resting beneath a root feels like a dull notch in an otherwise smooth waveform. This is the eel's private radar, an electrolocation system that maps life in complete darkness. But these faint electric pings do more than outline prey. They communicate. Each eel's waveform carries a unique pattern, an electrosignature recognizable to others of its kind. When 2 individuals meet, their fields overlap and interfere, creating beats and modulations that both can detect. Through this interference pattern, they gauge size, orientation, and even the mood of their counterpart. Some pulses shift subtly when an eel is stressed or courting. To a human instrument, their mere frequency shifts. To another eel, their sentences. The camera tracks the eel as it moves beneath the flooded roots. Every motion, a slow undulation of the body, a measured glide forward, is accompanied by a pulse train, a flickering Morse code of biology and voltage. Small fish respond unconsciously, their own weak bioelectric signals betraying them with each heartbeat. The eel listens. A cluster of movements ahead distorts the field. It turns, aligning itself with the disturbance. A second later, it fires, not a full discharge, but a precise, measured burst of high voltage that serves as both question and command. The first pulse probes, the second paralyzes. This two-pulse hunt reveals a level of control that borders on sentient precision. The initial shock does not kill, but triggers involuntary muscle contractions in hidden prey, forcing them to twitch, a last reflex that exposes their exact location. The eel then delivers a second full-voltage strike that immobilizes the target completely. In slow motion, the sequence looks almost surgical. A flash of muscle, a faint shimmer of light as ions rearrange in the water, and then stillness. The eel glides forward to claim what it has already mastered. Electricity here is not brute force, it's information. The eel's brain treats its environment as a matrix of conductance, voltage gradients, and spatial delay. When rain changes the chemistry of the water, diluting minerals, lowering conductivity, the eel must recalibrate its internal compass. The low-voltage pulses bend differently through soft water than through hard. The world literally feels different. Scientists who record these shifts find that eels alter the amplitude and rhythm of their discharges with each rainfall event, suggesting a real-time sensory compensation system. In effect, the eel is performing environmental diagnostics, rewriting its own perception code to match the changing physics of its world. This adaptation is vital because the Amazon's hydrology is in constant flux. Floodwaters rise and fall by meters across the seasons, turning lakes into forests and forests into channels. Each microhabitat conducts electricity differently. Silty floodplains amplify it, while tannin-heavy streams swallow it. The eel's sensory world is elastic, expanding and contracting with the geography of the basin. That elasticity defines not just where it can hunt, but how it hunts. A dry season eel is a close-range assassin, striking in confined pools. A flood season eel becomes an explorer, sending low-voltage scouts through a moving labyrinth. In laboratory settings, eels have been observed tracking their prey long after the initial contact, using the echoes of their own discharges as a kind of underwater sonar. Some scientists compare this to bats using echolocation, except that where bats read reflected sound, eels read the warping of electric lines in conductive media. Each pulse returns with subtle distortions, and from those distortions, the eel reconstructs the scene. It is sonar in liquid lightning. The evolutionary implications are profound. The eel's ancestors diverged from other knifefish millions of years ago, adapting to nocturnal hunting in opaque waters. Over generations, what began as weak electric sensing, used merely to navigate, became weaponized communication. By amplifying its voltage output, the eel blurred the boundary between sense and strike, between language and power. A single organ now carries both the whisper and the thunderclap. When eels gather in proximity, rare but observed during certain flood pulses, the water becomes an electromagnetic conversation. Males and females exchange pattern signals, adjusting pulse rates that seem to synchronize across individuals. During these interactions, aggression fades. The high-voltage discharges cease, replaced by gentle rhythmic pulses that ripple through the water like music. The same organ that subdues prey becomes momentarily a transmitter of intimacy. Evolution, again, shows its symmetry. Every weapon, under the right circumstance, can become a voice. What is striking is the precision of control. The eel's nervous system routes commands directly to electrocytes, modified muscle cells stacked in series like batteries. A single discharge may involve the activation of thousands of these cells at once, perfectly synchronized. The process occurs in milliseconds, faster than any conscious thought. Yet, unlike a static battery, the eel can shape each pulse's strength, duration, and rhythm at will. In this lies its genius, the transformation of raw current into syntax. Electricity becomes grammar. For humans, electricity is an external tool, generated, harnessed, and translated into light or motion. For the eel, it is internal and intuitive. It doesn't need to understand current to speak it. And through that language, it reads a universe of continuous feedback loops. Each pulse illuminates not space, but relation, the distance between bodies, the texture of water, the hidden outline of a fish in the dark. When a pulse returns altered, the eel interprets it instinctively, adjusting course as though following a voice calling back from the void. As the rain subsides, the black water clears slightly, and the camera lingers on the eel hovering motionless in the current. Faint electric ripples emanate from its flanks, invisible to the eye, but traceable through instrumentation. If the scene were rendered in false color, we'd see a dome of flickering force expanding and collapsing, a living radar sweeping through a silent world. Around it, the Amazon hums with other fields, the weak bioelectric traces of fish, the mineral conductance of roots, the slow recharge of charged clouds above. The eel exists within a continuum of electricity that begins in the sky and ends in the soil. In this ecosystem, electricity is not just physics, it is dialogue. The eel speaks to its surroundings through charge and discharge, listens through conductivity, learns through resistance. To us, its pulse might sound like static. To another eel, its meaning. Each spark is a syllable of survival, a language shaped by evolution to transcend darkness and distance. When it finally ascends to the surface to gulp air, a necessary act for this air-breathing fish, the camera catches the moment in still reflection. A faint ripple expands outward from its mouth, mirrored in the overcast sky above. For an instant, the surface holds both worlds, the atmospheric electricity of storms and the biological electricity below. Two languages separated by medium, united by principle. And so the question stands, suspended between water and air. Is electricity merely a weapon, or is it a voice? A way for life to speak where light cannot reach? In the eel's pulse, the answer hums quietly through the water. The jungle listens, and though it cannot hear the words, it feels the meaning. A rhythm older than thunder, written in the charged blood of the river itself. Night falls over the lowland forest with the precision of a switch. One moment the canopy still glows with the last copper of sunset. The next it sinks into liquid darkness. A faint mist rises from the river, catching stray lanterns of light from the village upriver. Small fires reflected across black water. For a few minutes, the forest holds its breath. Then the first pulse appears. A tiny spark flickers once, twice in the undergrowth. Another answers across the clearing, and then a dozen more join, until the darkness itself begins to breathe. Waves of soft gold flashing in patterns too complex to be random. The night has found its rhythm, has. To human eyes, this is spectacle, the hypnotic choreography of fireflies, small beetles turning the forest edge into a slow heartbeat of light. But within that beauty lies a coded world, a conversation of timing and wavelength, an electric courtship conducted through chemistry. Every flash, every pause between pulses carries meaning. In one species, males signal with pairs of short blinks separated by a long pause, hovering over the grass in slow arcs. Females reply from the ground, giving a single delayed flash that confirms species, readiness, and location. In another, the code is reversed. a sequence of rapid flickers, a dance of precision that can identify a mate from tens of meters away. For the forest, these lights are not decoration, they are data. At the molecular level, this language of light is born in the abdomen, within organs called lanterns. Thin membranes lined with photocytes that house luciferin and luciferase, the enzyme and substrate that together ignite bioluminescence. Oxygen enters the cells, reacting with the luciferin and releasing energy as photons. What seems like magic is simply chemistry optimized by evolution. The glow wastes almost no heat. Nearly 100% of the reaction's energy becomes light, making firefly lanterns among the most efficient natural light sources on Earth. When these creatures flash, they do so without burning. It's a quiet flame that leaves the air cold. Yet beneath the poetry of their glow lies something sharper: competition, deception, and sometimes murder. Among the thousands of firefly species scattered across tropical and temperate forests, many have evolved not just to signal, but to listen in. Some females of the genus Photuris have learned to mimic the light codes of other species. When a male of a different kind flashes his courtship pattern, she responds with the perfect imitation of his ideal mate's signal. Drawn in by what he thinks is love, he approaches, glowing with excitement. But when he lands, it is not affection that meets him. It is a predator. The Photuris female seizes him and consumes him alive, harvesting not just his body, but his chemical defenses. This act of predatory mimicry, known as femme fatale signaling, is one of nature's most chilling examples of communication turned weapon. The males of many firefly species carry defensive steroids, lucibufagins, that make them toxic to frogs, spiders, and even birds. By devouring them, the Photuris female incorporates these compounds into her own body, becoming poisonous herself. The mimicry therefore feeds two needs at once: nourishment and immunity. Evolution, in its pragmatic brilliance, rewards deception when honesty costs survival. Scientists studying these interactions along riverbanks in Central and South America have recorded hundreds of flash patterns using light sensors and time-coded cameras. The playback experiments are revealing. When artificial lights mimic male signals in the correct rhythm, females respond within seconds. Shift that rhythm by half a second and the conversation collapses. Precision governs everything. Even environmental light can sabotage the exchange. In villages where artificial lamps line the river, the male's signals drown in background glow. Their code, evolved for dark forests, fails under sodium light. In some populations, the density of successful pairings drops dramatically near human settlements, proof that even gentle light pollution can fracture an ancient dialogue. But the story is not only one of loss. The forest itself is a collaborator in the spectacle. Humidity, temperature, and vegetation density all shape how far and fast a flash travels. On still, misty nights, light scatters in the moisture, making individual flashes appear larger and softer, perhaps easier to spot by a potential mate. After rain, when leaves glisten, reflections multiply, transforming a single male's display into a constellation. What looks to us like chaos is, in fact, a communication system enhanced by the physics of the landscape. The forest, the air, and the insects form a network. Biochemistry meets optics, meets weather. One of the most remarkable behaviors occurs in synchronous species, those that coordinate their flashes into vast, synchronized waves. In Southeast Asia and parts of the Amazon basin, thousands of males line the banks of rivers, pulsing in unison, entire trees beating with the same light frequency. At first, The synchronization seems impossible. How can thousands of independent nervous systems align so precisely? The answer lies in phase coupling. Each firefly adjusts its rhythm based on the flashes of its neighbors, speeding up or slowing down by fractions of a second until all converge on a shared tempo. It's an emergent order, a living metronome born from feedback loops. In the synchronized forest, each flash is both individual and collective, personal and communal, a microcosm of natural coordination. Yet, amid this orchestration, predators move. Bats patrol the air, their echolocation clicks scanning for movement. Some frogs wait near riverbanks, timing their leaps with the firefly's glow, and within the swarm itself, mimics linger. A Photuris female flashes her false reply at the margins of the crowd, careful not to disrupt the main rhythm. Her lure is subtle, not too early, not too bright. She chooses males that wander at the edge, those isolated from the protective synchrony of the group. Their deception thrives in the cracks of coordination. The camera follows one such scene at the forest's edge. A male firefly drifts over the reeds, his abdomen pulsing in a steady rhythm. 2 quick flashes, 1 pause. From below, a single female responds with the exact complementary signal. The male turns sharply, descends. A brief moment of stillness. Then his light stops. A second later, hers burns slightly brighter. An echo of digestion, the physics of consumption turned luminous. The scene is both tragic and perfect, evolution playing its endless game of mimicry and counter-mimicry under the guise of beauty. To some scientists, the firefly's light language is the evolutionary endpoint of sensory specialization. Where birds developed color and song, these beetles built a system based on timing and photon precision. Each species occupies its own frequency of light communication, an invisible spectrum of flash patterns that prevent hybrid confusion. When mimicry appears, it's not random. It exploits the same neurological rules that govern recognition. The predators have learned the grammar of love and turned it into bait. From a broader ecological view, the presence of fireflies also signals environmental health. They thrive only in clean, moist habitats, places with stable humidity, rich vegetation, and low pesticide use. Their larvae, which glow faintly underground, feed on snails and worms, recycling nutrients into the soil. The adults, though short-lived, pollinate small night-blooming flowers and feed frogs, spiders, and fish. Light, in this sense, becomes a measure of ecosystem integrity. When fireflies vanish, it is not just a loss of spectacle, but a symptom of deeper imbalance, a silence in the code of the forest. As the night deepens, the pulse of light spreads outward. Over the river, thousands of glows shimmer on the mirrored surface, some reflections, some real. The camera widens, capturing the scale, each dot a story of chemistry, communication, and risk. Somewhere among them, signals cross. What began as a love letter may end as a trap. What started as attraction may dissolve into predation. But both are part of the same evolutionary dialogue, the endless negotiation between truth and imitation, between survival and desire. And when the human lights from the village finally dim, the forest reclaims its original circuitry. The fireflies resume their language, flashes of intent, replies of recognition, the rhythm of continuity. In this darkness, the forest speaks not through sound or scent, but through light. Tiny, timed promises floating in air, thick with moisture and meaning. Each pulse carries a question that evolution never stops asking. When does a signal cease to communicate and begin to deceive? Or, put simply, When does a love letter become a lure? The rainforest floor is never still. Beneath the tangle of roots and fallen leaves, beneath the quiet shimmer of mist and the constant whisper of insects, a silent current runs, not of water or air, but of bodies. Leafcutter ants. Tens of thousands of them, moving in lanes as precise as city avenues, each carrying a green shard of the canopy above. To the untrained eye, it looks like chaos, fragments of light trembling through shadow, disappearing into tunnels at the forest's base. But to those who listen closer, to the rhythm beneath the movement, it becomes clear that this is not chaos at all. It's order, a living network. The colony stretches underground like a vast biological machine, chambers stacked in tiers, some for brood, some for fungus, some for refuse. Within this network, communication doesn't travel by sound or sight, but by chemistry. Each ant, though nearly blind, carries a biochemical vocabulary on her body, pheromones that signal trail routes, alarm, caste identity, even the colony's current nutritional state. When she lays a trail, it is not a simple line of scent. It's an encoded message, direction, intensity, freshness and purpose, all compressed into molecules small enough to ride air currents and adhere to soil. Through this invisible language, a colony of millions behaves as a single thinking entity. On a humid night, when dew has just begun to condense on the leaves, a column of attocephalotes marches outward to forage. Their objective is not random. Scouts have already mapped the canopy above, identifying fresh growth rich in nitrogen, avoiding those plants with defensive toxins or fungi-suppressing chemicals. The first successful scout returns, dragging her fragment of leaf and laying a trail of citral and methyl-4-methylpyrrole. Within seconds, the scent is read by hundreds of others who amplify it by layering their own traces. The result is a pheromone highway, an information corridor that grows denser and more reinforced with each passing worker. What begins as a suggestion becomes, through feedback, a command. The forest floor is now a network of chemical wires, flexible, self-correcting, and astonishingly fast. To visualize this, researchers have used ultraviolet tracers and smoke plumes under night vision cameras. The results reveal a dynamic system. When an obstacle appears, a fallen branch, a flood puddle, a careless boot, the trail shatters, but within seconds, a new route emerges. The ants at the front, momentarily disoriented, fan out in micro-search patterns, releasing bursts of exploratory pheromones. As soon as one finds a viable detour, others follow, reinforcing the new route until it replaces the old. Within minutes, the entire colony has rerouted, a process so efficient it rivals the adaptive algorithms that govern our own digital networks. The rainforest, through these insects, has built its own internet of movement and chemistry. But the miracle lies deeper than logistics. The leaf cutters are not simply moving leaves, they are cultivating life. Each fragment carried underground is a resource for the colony's fungal gardens, their true heart. Deep within the nest, where humidity and temperature remain stable, workers chew the leaves into a pulp and seed it with spores of Leucoagaricus gongylophorus, a specialized fungus that can digest the plant matter into edible nodules. These nodules, rich in sugars and amino acids, sustain the entire colony. The ants, in turn, feed and prune the fungus, removing contaminants and regulating its microclimate. They are not just farmers, they are microbiological engineers maintaining a living reactor. This partnership between insect and fungus has persisted for tens of millions of years, older than agriculture itself. Long before humans learned to till soil, these ants were running distributed, multicast farming systems complete with waste management, irrigation through condensation, and continuous crop rotation. The fungus cannot survive without the ants, and the ants cannot survive without the fungus. Their pheromone highways are not only trade routes, but lifelines, connecting the forest canopy to the subterranean farms below. To grasp the speed and complexity of their system, imagine this. A single colony may stretch for 50 meters underground and host 5 million individuals. Yet when a tree branch breaks or a predator approaches, the message of alarm spreads through chemical relay in seconds. One ant releases formic acid and alarm pheromones. Nearby workers detect it, mirror it, and the signal ripples outward like a wave. Within a moment, the foraging columns collapse into defensive formation, soldiers raising their jaws, mandibles capable of slicing human skin, while workers retreat with their loads. The speed of coordination defies the apparent slowness of individual motion. No single ant understands the whole system, yet the system acts as if it has understanding. It's a kind of emergent intelligence, a mind made not of neurons but of movement and chemistry. Scientists describe it as stigmergy, coordination through environmental modification. Each ant changes its surroundings slightly, by laying scent, moving debris, altering airflow, and others respond to those changes, creating feedback loops that guide the whole. The principle is eerily similar to how our own digital infrastructures route information through nodes, reassigning bandwidth when lines fail. The forest floor, in effect, runs a decentralized operating system powered by biology instead of silicon. But nature's networks carry costs. Heavy rain can wash away pheromone trails, forcing ants to switch from scent to tactile guidance, using the feel of terrain and the presence of returning workers as cues. On hot days, volatile pheromones evaporate faster, reducing the lifespan of each message. To compensate, ants adjust their deposition rate, laying thicker trails or spacing them closer together. Every weather fluctuation demands recalibration. To survive, their communication must remain flexible, adaptive, and self-healing, traits that human engineers only dream of replicating perfectly. Then there are the predators and parasites that exploit these pathways. Phorid flies, for instance, hover over the foraging lines, watching for exposed workers. When they spot one, they swoop in to lay eggs behind her head. The larvae will later consume the ant from within. Yet even these attacks become data. As pheromone trails fade around danger zones, ants automatically redirect flow, isolating compromised paths until the threat passes. The network edits itself, pruning danger from memory. In experimental setups where scientists deliberately disrupted active highways with smoke, the response was astonishing. Within moments of the obstruction, forward movement ceased, but rear workers continued to arrive, forming dense clusters. Soon, the ants at the edge began probing sideways, laying exploratory micro-trails until one line found clearer air. The colony's bandwidth shifted seamlessly to the new route, traffic restored in less than 5 minutes. When visualized through tracer dye, the shift looks almost digital, a pulse of adaptation, a rerouting of packets through alternate circuits. If the forest had routers, they would look like ants. At dawn, as the mist thins and light begins to dapple through the canopy, the network is still alive. Tiny fragments of leaves continue to move along those emerald highways, glinting like traffic signals against the brown soil. The hum of the colony beneath is inaudible but constant, a faint vibration that runs through root and rock. Above ground, predators hunt by sight and sound. Below ground, the ants communicate through molecules, frequencies of meaning imperceptible to all but themselves. Their civilization thrives not through power or speed, but through precision and cooperation. The question lingers, half play and half truth. Do ants have faster internet than we do? In many ways, yes, not by megabytes per second, but by efficiency per need. Their system wastes nothing. It scales without leadership, repairs itself without command, and adapts instantly to failure. Information in this world is not abstract. It smells, it fades, it is rebuilt anew with every step. The network never sleeps because its carriers never stop moving. As the camera pulls back, the forest floor becomes a vast map of shifting lines, green shards of leaf flowing along unseen scent routes. Each piece is a message, each ant a node. The forest hums with data, translated into motion, translated again into survival. In this silent circuitry, the boundary between organism and system disappears. What looks like a line of insects is, in truth, a network of thought, one that existed long before wires, satellites, or fiber optics. And beneath the morning light, as the last traces of pheromone dissipate into the damp air, the colony continues its quiet labor, invisible signals weaving through soil and scent, a living internet older than civilization itself. Midnight in the cloud forest is never truly dark. Mist drifts through the canopy like cold breath, scattering what little moonlight filters through. Drops of condensed water fall in slow intervals, each impact amplified in the still air, a sound both rhythmic and random, as if the forest is keeping time with the clouds. Beneath this vast green cathedral, the leaves glisten like wet glass. And upon one of them, no larger than a coin, sits a glass frog, translucent, motionless, the rhythm of its tiny heart visible through its chest. To find it, even with a flashlight, is to test the eye's limits. The frog's body seems to borrow its color from the leaf itself. Pale green veins align with its own. Light passes through rather than bouncing back. In this way, the frog disappears not by hiding behind something, but by becoming what it rests upon. Its skin is so thin that organs shimmer faintly beneath it, a living transparency that confuses both predator and observer. In the stillness, it looks less like flesh and more like condensation given form. Yet what it lacks in visibility, it compensates for in vibration. A communication system as invisible as its body, but just as precise. This is the secret world of Hyalinobatrachium fleischmanni, the ghost of the leaves. By day, it vanishes in plain sight. By night, it speaks through the trembling of the world itself. Males, perched on the undersides of leaves overhanging streams, send messages not with croaks or calls. Those would betray them to predators like bats and snakes, but with vibrations. Tiny pulses of their limbs or vocal sacs travel through the leaf's surface, propagating as micro-tremors. To another frog perched nearby, the signal is as clear as sound, a coded rhythm of presence, territory, and invitation. To everything else, it is silence. What the human ear cannot hear, the forest floor can feel. When scientists use laser vibrometry to read the leaf's surface, they see patterns of oscillation, waveforms no more than a few microns in amplitude, yet distinct and repeatable. Each male has his own vibration signature, a tactile song shaped by the stiffness of the leaf and the humidity of the air. Some pulses are sharp, like drumming fingertips. Others ripple gently, modulated by the frog's body weight and posture. The message travels only centimeters, but in the close quarters of the forest understory, that is enough. To a receptive female resting a few leaves away, the call is not sound but motion, a tremor felt through her bones. This tactile courtship evolved from necessity. The glass frog's habitat is a sensory battlefield. Night here is crowded with sound. The chorus of crickets, katydids and other frogs layers into an almost solid wall of noise. To communicate by voice is to risk being lost in the din, or worse, to attract attention from above. Bats use echolocation to locate calling males. Snakes triangulate sound vibrations on the ground. In such an environment, silence becomes survival, and communication must find new channels. So these frogs shifted their language from air to substrate, from vibrationless light to a whisper in matter itself. It's a delicate system of trade-offs. The leaf acts as both amplifier and filter. Thick, waxy leaves dampen vibrations. Thin, tensed leaves transmit them faster and farther. Some males are selective in their choice of calling platform, preferring leaves with the right elasticity, not too rigid, not too soft. Researchers have recorded males testing the surface before settling, pressing gently with their limbs as if tuning an instrument. The result is a form of acoustic camouflage, signals that reach their intended audience but fade quickly into the background for anything not attuned to their frequency. Still, communication is never without risk. Owls and snakes have evolved to sense the faint rustle of movement on foliage. Even micro-vibrations may betray a frog's position if amplified by the wrong surface or echoed by nearby stems. Yet here, transparency becomes the second half of the defense. The frog's glass-like body breaks up outlines and reflections, confusing predators that rely on contrast and silhouette. Transparency and silence, two different strategies, merge into one message. I am here, but you cannot find me. It is this convergence that makes the glass frog so remarkable. In evolutionary terms, transparency in land vertebrates is exceedingly rare. Air, unlike water, refracts light unevenly across tissue types, making invisibility nearly impossible. But these frogs come close. Their bones and muscles carry pigments that match the spectral reflectance of leaves, and their red blood cells are stored in the liver during rest, reducing optical noise. During the day, when predators are most active, they literally remove the color from their own bodies, a physiological sleight of hand that renders them spectral. Only at night, when signaling, do their veins darken again, blood returning to circulation for the metabolic demands of movement and communication. The shift is almost imperceptible but exact, a daily rhythm between presence and absence. From a higher perspective, these behaviors turn the forest itself into a communication network, not through sound, but through vibration. Each leaf is a node, each frog a transmitter. The signals propagate through interconnected vegetation, forming what scientists call a substrate-borne information web. In laboratory experiments, when a single leaf is plucked or disturbed, the tremor pattern changes instantly, and neighboring frogs alter their signaling frequency. It's a form of feedback, an awareness of the medium itself. The frogs don't just speak through the forest, they listen to it. Laser vibrometry studies show that their leaf messages differ depending on context. A male defending territory produces a burst pattern, sharp, repeated pulses that mimic the strike of raindrops, but follow too regular a rhythm to be natural. Courtship signals are slower, often synchronized with the frog's visible movement, a throat inflation, a leg tremor. The frequencies occupy a narrow band between 100 and 200 Hz, where ambient noise from rain and wind is minimal. Nature, in its subtlety, has left an acoustic window open, and the glass frog has evolved to occupy it. When rain intensifies, the constant percussion of the wet season, males switch strategies. Their vibrations become more forceful, more rhythmic, as if trying to outcompete the chaos around them. Some even supplement their tremors with faint, high-pitched calls, blending two modalities to ensure reception. In this, the frogs demonstrate sensory flexibility, the ability to adapt their communication channel based on the environment's signal-to-noise ratio. It is, effectively, bandwidth management in an ecosystem of interference. The implications extend beyond the frogs themselves. By studying their signaling, biologists gain insight into how ecosystems transmit information, how physical structures like leaves, stems, and water surfaces serve as conduits for countless species interactions. Every insect step, every falling drop, every heartbeat felt through the substrate is a line of data in a network older than speech. The forest is not silent, it's simply tuned below our hearing. For predators, however, that same network can be an opportunity. Spiders, particularly Cupienia species, can sense the faintest leaf vibrations through specialized hairs on their legs. They exploit this sensitivity to locate courting frogs, homing in on their tremor signatures. The risk of communication is thus constant, a negotiation between attraction and exposure. Some frogs mitigate this by altering rhythm, using deceptive pauses or overlapping their signals with rainfall to mask their location. It's a sophisticated form of signal encryption, learned not by culture, but by evolution. Toward dawn, the mist thickens again. The leaves bead with condensation, muting even the smallest vibration. The male frog remains still, his body blending seamlessly into the underside of the leaf. The forest grows louder with insects and dripping water, and his communication fades into the pulse of ambient life. In the final light of the waning moon, he becomes nearly invisible, a faint outline of life suspended between glass and chlorophyll. Transparency and silence, these are not separate adaptations, but reflections of the same principle, survival through subtlety. In a world overflowing with noise and color, the glass frog thrives by subtracting itself from perception. Its body refracts light rather than reflecting it. Its voice moves through matter rather than air. It is an organism that has rewritten the sensory rules of its ecosystem, turning invisibility and inaudibility into tools of persistence. The camera lingers on the leaf as first light reaches the canopy. Dew trembles, a droplet quivers, and the frog is gone, melted back into the geometry of the forest. What remains is motion without form, presence without sound. The forest exhales. Somewhere below, the stream murmurs under the weight of mist. The question it seems to ask is simple, almost philosophical. In the natural world, where perception defines existence, are transparency and silence the same message? Or are they the forest's most eloquent way of saying nothing at all? Night in the savannah begins not with silence, but with vibration. Beneath the dry grasses, the air hums with frequencies too low for human ears. The footfalls of beetles, the tremor of wind through grass stems, the whisper of termites shifting sand. Each sound travels through the earth, rebounding off roots and hollow stones. To the creatures that live underground, these vibrations are not background noise. They are a form of vision. And among the most skilled readers of this invisible language is a creature that rarely needs to see at all. The tarantula waits in her burrow. The entrance is little more than a crescent shadow in the dirt, rimmed with silk, a door frame of invisible threads that extend outward like tripwires. The spider sits just below the surface, motionless, forelegs resting lightly on those strands. To an outsider, she appears dormant. To her, the world is alive with signals. Every thread hums with potential meaning. When a beetle crosses the threshold, its weight produces a low, heavy vibration, slow, rhythmic, deliberate. A moth's stumble is higher pitched, scattered, more chaotic. A rival spider's approach produces a complex, pulsating tremor that moves in deliberate intervals, the vibration equivalent of a signature. The tarantula interprets all of this instantly. Her body is not just an instrument of attack, it's an array of sensors. Fine hairs, called trichobothria, line her legs and abdomen, each sensitive enough to detect the displacement of air caused by a walking insect several centimeters away. Through these hairs and the tension in her silk, she builds a three-dimensional map of her surroundings. For a moment she remains still. Then, a subtle twitch ripples through the line connected to her burrow. The vibration is faint, measured, repeating at steady intervals, the telltale rhythm of an ant column crossing her perimeter. She doesn't move. Ants are risky, numerous, armed with formic acid, and capable of overwhelming even a spider her size. The signal fades as they pass. Minutes later, another vibration, deeper now, irregular. Something heavier. She stirs. A field mouse has brushed one of her threads, its paws dragging across the line like a bow on a cello string. Within milliseconds, the tarantula has calculated its direction and speed. Her body angles upward, fangs poised. But she waits again. The vibration shifts slightly, higher frequency now, the distinct staccato of something smaller, likely a cricket. She moves. The strike is instantaneous. Bursting from the burrow, she crosses the threshold in a single fluid motion, guided not by sight, but by the last vibration that still lingers in the silk. Her legs hit the target precisely. Fangs pierce exoskeleton, venom floods in. The entire event lasts less than a second. Then silence. The cricket twitches once and stills. The spider drags it backward, vanishing into the tunnel. The silk quivers again as she seals the entrance behind her, resetting the lines. This is how the tarantula reads the world, through tension and tone, each tremor a syllable in a language of pressure. To her, the silk is more than a trap. It is a telephone, a living extension of her nervous system. Scientists have found that tarantulas distinguish between at least 5 classes of vibration: prey, predator, mate, environmental noise, and self-interference. Each category occupies a different frequency band, ranging from the deep 20 Hz rumble of heavy insects to the faint 500 Hz buzz of small flies. The spider's brain, a distributed network of ganglia spread through her legs and cephalothorax, filters these inputs automatically, prioritizing some, ignoring others. The result is a kind of biological bandwidth management system. In laboratory tests, researchers attach micro-vibrators to a tarantula's silk threads and play artificial patterns, simulating, for instance, the approach of prey or a rival. The responses are astonishingly specific. Low-frequency single-pulse waves trigger hunting posture. Higher-frequency double pulses elicit curiosity, but no aggression. Irregular oscillations produce retreat behavior. The spider, in effect, decodes the invisible text instantly, translating it into action. The web may be small and primitive compared to that of orb weavers, but as a sensory array, it rivals any living system in precision. What makes this sensitivity possible lies in the structure of silk itself. Tarantula silk is thicker than that of aerial web builders, designed not for elasticity but for transmission. It carries vibration efficiently through soil and air alike. When stretched across a burrow entrance, it becomes a drum skin, amplifying minute disturbances from the surrounding world. Each strand resonates differently depending on its tension and angle, creating a natural frequency map. By resting her legs on multiple lines at once, the tarantula can triangulate position, converting oscillations into coordinates. It's an analog computer made of protein. But the spider's relationship with vibration is not purely predatory. During mating season, the language changes entirely. Males, wandering at night, tap the ground rhythmically near a burrow entrance. The sequence is deliberate. A low-frequency preamble followed by quick pulses, spaced like a drum roll. This knocking is a courtship signal, a coded message that says, "I am not food." The female, if receptive, responds with faint tremors of her own, matching rhythm for rhythm. If not, she remains silent, or worse, attacks. Evolution has tuned these signals to minimize risk. A male that misreads them often doesn't live long enough to try again. The silk also records history. Even after a signal fades, the threads retain micro-deformations, subtle changes in alignment that persist for minutes or hours. To us, they're imperceptible, but to the spider they represent recent events, the direction of a passing beetle, the last breeze that disturbed her perimeter. It is, quite literally, a written record in an invisible text, one updated continuously, erased by time and weather. Predators, too, have learned to exploit this language. Some wasps, specializing in tarantulas, detect the faint tremors of silk marking and follow them to the burrow. When they find it, they drum lightly on the entrance, imitating the footsteps of prey. The spider, deceived by the familiar pattern, emerges and is stung into paralysis. Her own instrument betrays her. This evolutionary arms race has refined both sides, the tarantula's interpretive precision and the predator's mimicry of its code. In the rainforest and desert alike, survival often depends not on who is stronger, but who reads the vibration more accurately. Beyond the hunt and the courtship, silk serves as an environmental translator. The tarantula's underground home is a climate chamber, where humidity, temperature and air pressure fluctuate less violently than above. Through her silk lines, she can detect approaching storms, the subtle drop in barometric pressure, the changing frequency of wind-driven debris. Some species have been seen sealing their burrows hours before rainfall, long before the first drop hits the ground. The same vibrational literacy that guides her feeding also safeguards her shelter. To the camera's lens, the world of the tarantula is nearly silent. But if one could slow time and amplify motion, every blade of grass would seem to shiver with data. The spider at the center is not still. She is listening, her body aligned like a receiver, tuned to the frequencies of the earth. Each vibration is an encoded story of approach, of departure, of danger, of opportunity. What emerges from this is a portrait not of a monster, but of a master of information, a creature whose intelligence is distributed across silk, soil, and sense. Her awareness is externalized, her nervous system extended through the medium of her own making. The threads are her neurons, stretched into the landscape, connecting her to everything that moves within reach. As dawn approaches, the forest begins to stir, the first insects warming their wings, the first birds calling above. The tarantula retreats deeper into her burrow, tucking her legs beneath her abdomen, still resting on the central thread. She will sleep through the daylight, but her instrument remains active, every line alive with tension. Outside, wind moves the grass in long, slow waves. Each movement plucks a faint tone that travels down into the dark, touching her body like a whisper. She doesn't wake, but she feels it. In the grand theatre of life, her communication is invisible, inaudible, written in tension rather than ink. It is a script of survival, read only through touch. Each vibration a word, each tremor a sentence. For the tarantula, the silk is her paper, her pulse, her language, her world. And for those who understand it, that world is not silent at all. It hums with meaning, an unseen text written across the surface of the earth, one that never stops being rewritten by every step, every wing beat, every passing life.